On the lake in the early morning, before the mist had lifted, old Tom dragged his tired body to inspect the duck shed. His farm had been unprofitable for 3 months, the price of duck eggs had fallen so far that the villagers persuaded him to give up farming, but he was never willing to leave the land that had accompanied him all his life. Just as he was about to return to the house, a strange light flashed through the reeds by the lake. Tom frowned, looked closer, and found a nest of unusual duck eggs, not with a soft white color like ordinary duck eggs, but with a metallic sheen, as if plated with a layer of gold. In the sunlight, the eggs reflect a faint rainbow light, as if they are not from this world. "What's going on?" Tom whispered to himself, reaching out and gently touching one of the eggs, the cold touch making him shiver slightly. He looked around, but there was no sign of the adult duck. Curiously, the eggs appear to have just been laid, with a thin layer of wetness on the surface. He hesitated, but finally carefully retrieved the eggs back to the farm. He put them in the incubator, his mind full of questions and faint anticipation. "Perhaps, this is the last chance God has given me," Tom muttered, looking at the glimmering duck eggs in the incubator with a long-lost hope in his eyes. However, he doesn't know that the appearance of these eggs will completely change his fate and will also reveal a secret buried deep at the bottom of the lake. Ever since the strange nest of duck eggs was brought back to the farm, old Tom's life seems to have become less peaceful. A few days later, there was a slight click in the incubator. Tom hurried over and saw the metallic eggshells begin to crack, a strange glow shining through the cracks. He held his breath and stared intently at the scene in front of him. With a crisp cracking sound at the last moment, a duckling poked its head out of its eggshell. Its feathers are very different from ordinary ducklings, not soft yellow, but covered with a layer of colored feathers that seem to have a metallic sheen. The sunlight shone through the window, and it reflected a faint rainbow halo. Immediately afterwards, other eggs hatched, each with the same singular traits. Tom was dumbfounded. He had never seen ducks like this, and he didn't even know how to describe them. They have piercing eyes and nimble movements, and seem to be smarter and more agile than the average duckling. It's a miracle," Tom muttered, excited and apprehensive. He carefully transferred the ducklings to a warm nest and began to feed them. However, he soon discovered that the eating habits of these ducklings were also different from those of regular ducks. They have no interest in ordinary duck feed, but they have a special preference for a certain type of wild grass picked by the lake. Tom was vaguely uneasy, but he decided not to tell anyone for now. He knew that the people of the village were wary of anything out of the ordinary, and would even see it as a bad omen. He didn't want the ducklings to be the focus of the villagers' discussions, let alone hurt them. However, secrets are hard to hide for long. Ever since the strange nest of duck eggs was brought back to the farm, old Tom's life seems to have become less peaceful. A few days later, there was a slight click in the incubator. Tom hurried over and saw the metallic eggshells begin to crack, a strange glow shining through the cracks. He held his breath and stared intently at the scene in front of him. With a crisp cracking sound at the last moment, a duckling poked its head out of its eggshell. Its feathers are very different from ordinary ducklings, not soft yellow, but covered with a layer of colored feathers that seem to have a metallic sheen. The sunlight shone through the window, and it reflected a faint rainbow halo. Immediately afterwards, other eggs hatched, each with the same singular traits. Tom was dumbfounded. He had never seen ducks like this, and he didn't even know how to describe them. They have piercing eyes and nimble movements, and seem to be smarter and more agile than the average duckling. It's a miracle," Tom muttered, excited and apprehensive. He carefully transferred the ducklings to a warm nest and began to feed them. However, he soon discovered that the eating habits of these ducklings were also different from those of regular ducks. They have no interest in ordinary duck feed, but they have a special preference for a certain type of wild grass picked by the lake. Tom was vaguely uneasy, but he decided not to tell anyone for now. He knew that the people of the village were wary of anything out of the ordinary, and would even see it as a bad omen. He didn't want the ducklings to be the focus of the villagers' discussions, let alone hurt them. However, secrets are hard to hide for long. A few days later, Tom's neighbor Jack happened to pass by the farm and heard a strange cry coming from the duck shed. He looked intriguedly, and was immediately stunned by what he saw. The rainbow-lit ducklings were lining up and learning to walk under Tom's guidance. "Tom, what are these things?" Jack asked, shocked. Tom was stunned for a moment, then replied calmly, "It's just some ordinary ducklings, maybe the breed is a little special." "Ordinary?" Jack frowned. "I've never seen ducks like this, they look. It's so abnormal." Tom didn't explain any more, just waved his hand in motion for Jack to leave. However, the seeds of doubt have been planted in Jack's heart. When he returned to the village, he couldn't help but mention Tom's strange duck to the other villagers. Soon, rumors of the rainbow duck spread in the village. The reaction of the villagers varied. Some people are curious about these ducks and even want to see what they look like with their own eyes, others are worried, believing that the ducks could be hoodoo and could even bring disaster to the village. The next morning, Tom was feeding the ducks when he heard a noise outside the door. He opened the door and found a group of villagers gathered outside the farm, chattering. "Tom, I heard you've got some weird ducks, and we'd like to see them." A villager shouted. "Yes, listen to Jack, they don't look like normal ducks." Another villager chimed in. Tom frowned, he knew he couldn't hide it any longer. He sighed and opened the door to the duck shed. Those rainbow ducks immediately caused exclamations from the villagers. "Oh my God, their feathers reflect light. What the hell is this breed? I've never seen one. Is it really okay?" The reaction of the villagers upset Tom. He tried to explain that these ducks were just a special breed, but, apparently, not everyone believed his words. Jack, in particular, stood in the crowd with deep suspicion in his eyes. "Tom, are these ducks really okay?" Jack questioned. "They look so weird, even a little unnatural. They're just ordinary ducks." Tom raised his voice. "They didn't hurt anyone, and they didn't cause any disaster." However, Tom's argument did not calm the villagers' doubts. It has been suggested that these ducks may be the product of a genetic mutation and may even pose a threat to humans. It was also suggested that all the ducks should be destroyed so as not to harm the village. Tom felt angry and helpless. He knew that there was nothing wrong with the ducks, but he couldn't change the prejudices of the villagers. He could only guard them tightly and not let anyone get close. However, it didn't end there. A few days later, Tom noticed strange footprints on the grass outside the duck shed, as if someone had broken into his farm in the middle of the night. He began to worry that the ducks could be stolen or even harmed. Meanwhile, Tom's granddaughter, Lisa, returns to the farm from the city. She is a college student studying biology. When she saw these rainbow ducks, she immediately became intrigued by them. "Grandpa, these ducks are so special." Lisa excitedly said, "Their feather structure may be unique, can I take some samples and study them?" Tom hesitated, but finally nodded. He believes that Lisa will not harm the ducks, and that perhaps her research will be able to unlock their secrets. However, Lisa's research complicates matters even more. She found that the ducks appeared to carry a special mutation in their genes that may have given them greater disease resistance and the ability to adapt to their environment. "Grandpa, these ducks may be descendants of some ancient species, and their genes are very special." Lisa said excitedly, "If you can study it deeply, it may be of great help to modern agriculture." When Tom heard this, his heart was full of contradictions. He was both proud of the peculiarity of these ducks, but also worried that their presence would cause more trouble. At this time, the villagers' suspicions and unease are gradually escalating, and the shadow of the conflict is approaching step by step. Since Lisa's discovery was heard by Tom, his heart has become more complicated. During the day, he still takes care of the rainbow ducks, but at night he often loses sleep, fearing that the villagers' uneasiness will turn into a bigger crisis. Although Lisa's research gave him an eye on the positive implications of these ducks, it also made him more aware that the fate of these little beings was no longer just him. One evening a few days later, Tom was busy outside the duck shed when he suddenly heard a noisy footstep in the distance. He turned his head to see Jack walking towards the farm with a group of villagers. They had torches and tools in their hands, and the expressions on their faces were serious but determined. "Tom, we've already discussed," Jack said, standing in front of the crowd, in a cold tone, "these ducks can't stay in the village. They're so weird, who knows if they won't bring disaster." "Disaster?" Tom sneered, anger and helplessness in his tone. "They're just a bunch of innocent little beings, why do you say they can bring disaster?" "By their abnormality." Jack raised his voice, "You yourself know that their existence is simply unexplainable. We can't take that risk." The villagers nodded in agreement, and the atmosphere became more and more tense. Tom took a deep breath and tried to calm himself down. He knew that if the argument continued, it would only make the situation worse. Just then, Lisa came out of the house. She held a printed report in her hand with an unmistakable look of firmness on her face. "Wait a minute," she said in a clear and powerful voice, "I know you're scared of these ducks, but they're not the monsters you think they are. They do have some special mutations in their genes, but that's not a bad thing. On the contrary, they may be of great help to humans." Lisa's words silenced the crowd for a moment, but soon someone questioned, "Help? How can they help us? Don't fool us with that scientific stuff." Instead of flinching, Lisa went on to explain, "The genetic mutations in these ducks make them more resistant to disease and adaptable. If we can study them, we may be able to find ways to improve the genes of poultry and even increase agricultural yields. This is not a monster, but a miracle of nature." However, Lisa's explanation did not completely dispel the villagers' doubts. Jack snorted coldly and said, "No matter what they are for, we can't risk letting them stay here. Tom, we have to solve this problem today." Tom's heart sank, and he knew that the villagers' fears had reached their peak. He stood at the door of the duck shed, with his arms outstretched, blocking everyone's way. "You can't do that," he exclaimed, "they are innocent lives, and I will never let you hurt them." "Grandpa," Lisa whispered, tugging at Tom's sleeve, "maybe we can solve the problem in another way." Tom turned to look at Lisa, his eyes full of confusion and unease. Lisa continued, "We can contact the Institute of Biology and send these ducks there. It can not only protect them, but also allow their particularity to be scientifically studied and utilized. In this way, everyone can have peace of mind." Tom was silent for a moment, then finally nodded. He knew it was the best thing to do right now.